From the Third World to First is a book written by the former Prime Minister of Singapore, Kuan Yew. The book tells us about one of the most interesting politicians and his journey of turning a little island into a strong and well-developed state that now serves as a great example of desired development for other countries. The work of Lee Kuan Yew contains the description of internal reforms and political decisions connected with external policy that contributed to the establishment of strong international ties, as well as resulting in the production of stable political, economic, and social climate within the state. The book might be called the greatest work in the world of politics created by a politician and may serve as a guideline for current political actors.
Singapore has a very rich history regarding the internal policy of the state. Singapore nowadays is one of the leading states across the whole globe. However, it has not been like that forever. Singapore is among 4 Asian tiger states, and this is all thanks to Lee Kuan Yew and his ministers. Internal policy has played a vital role in building a very strong, well-developed, independent state with a rapidly growing economy. Thanks to Lee Kuan Yew, the Singaporean government understood that they needed to introduce some economic reforms in order to expand the Singaporean economy. They decided to focus on export-oriented industrialization and attraction of foreign investment, for example, from the USA and Japan in 1972. They also decided to invest in private and financial sectors to attract multinational organizations and build a port with a very favorable position for international trade. Central Provident Fund was established. It is a social security scheme which helped to create a capital for further economic reforms. In 1970s, special level of development was achieved, and the government set a new goal to turn Singapore into a technologically advanced state. So, to sum up, we can see that the economy of Singapore is well developed, as the Singapore is one of 4 Asian tiger states. However, there is still some room for improvement. As a political sphere, Singapore is generally believed to be a democracy. However, some people disagree, and this is all due to the reason there is only one dominant political party in the state called People's Action Party, that dominated since 1959. In addition, there is evidence of civil rights and freedoms being suppressed. The same issue can be seen during a communist regime. Nevertheless, Lee Kuan Yew always said that communism is a threat to Singapore and could be never implemented in the state. Non-constituency member of parliament that was created in 1984 was created in order to allow some competition in the parliament. Group representation constituency was created in 1988 in order to enhance minority representation. In 1991, there was a constitution that proclaimed that the president is the ultimate leader of the state with the right of veto. Also, we can say that there is a lack of separation between branches of power. Consequently, there is a miscarriage of justice. In 1990s, Lee Kuan Yew was removed from power and his current president was introduced. And now there is a more open leadership of the state.
Now let's talk about education in Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew had an opinion that with education, the population of the country would be the nation's most important asset in an island with absolutely no hinterland or any natural resources. Working towards that vision, Mr. Lee in the 1950s and in 1960s focused on building an efficient universal education system that would provide a skilled workforce for Singapore's industrialization program as well as to lower unemployment. Mr. Lee also saw the need to build a professional teaching force and internationally competitive local universities that would put Singapore on the world map. As for healthcare system, there were conducted several campaigns such as Keep Singapore Clean and promotion of healthy lifestyles. They were promoted to encourage people to look after both environmental and personal well-being. These programs targeted causes of diseases and preventive measures in health promotion, serving as the most important and effective means of public education. Lee Kuan Yew also exhorted doctors in Singapore to keep the high standards of professionalism and strive to be the center for medical excellence.
Okay, now let's talk about foreign policy of Singapore. Singapore's foreign policy has evolved over time. In order to go from poverty to prosperity in 3 decades, Singapore had to overcome almost irresistible obstacles. After 1965, Singapore experienced a hectic, stressful period of time in which the country tried to get on its feet. And although Singapore now is a small country, but with the strong foreign policy. After Singapore gained independence on the 9th of August in 1965, the young government of the country had to resolve the issue of political recognition of Singapore as well as achieve economic cooperation with the industrial powers. The first step was joining the UN in 1965. Then a period of intense international contacts began. At that time, a lot of foreign leaders did not even hear about the new country in Southeast Asia. In history of Singapore, relations with Indonesia and Malaysia were the most important relations despite the difficult separation from Malaysia and Indonesian-Malaysian confrontations in 1963-1966, where Indonesia opposed the creation of Malaysia. Another important event in foreign policy was the last British military forces withdrawn. It was necessary to maintain a British presence as long as possible because Singapore army was weak enough to respond to the serious attacks of Malaysia and Indonesia. Lee Kuan Yew spent a lot of time in London to solve this issue, and the initial discussion was that the Britain would leave Singapore by the end of 70s. However, near the future, pound was devalued and Britain was forced to reduce costs for all budget items, including the maintenance of military bases. Thus, the British government decided on the complete withdrawal of troops in 1971. As for the diplomatic relations between China and Singapore, they officially began on the 3rd of October 1990. Singapore was the last country in Southeast Asia that officially recognized the PRC out of respect for Indonesia and the fear of communist countries at that time. Singapore still maintains military cooperation with the Republic of China, Taiwan, under the 1975 agreement, due to the lack of space for exercises in the state itself. Now Singapore maintains diplomatic relations with 186 countries of the world. It is a member of the UN, of the British Commonwealth, Non-Aligned Movement, and ASEAN. Singapore has a good relationship with the UK, with which it has concluded 5 defensive treaties. Good relations are maintained with the United States of America.
To conclude, under Lee Kuan Yew's leadership, Singapore has gone from a poor, economically backward, third world country to one of the first richest countries in the world. The author of the book indicated in his work that through hard work and creative thinking, it is possible to conquer any obstacle and achieve any aim. His reforms in economic, political, social spheres, as well as maintaining strong external policy, helped to turn Singapore in one of the leading states in the world. From the Third World to First is a brilliant book that tells us a story of the man who dedicated his whole life to one state.